My name is Konstanze Scharring. I'm indeed the Director of Policy for the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders. We are the main trade body for the automotive industry. And the lovely exam question or essay question that Philippa, Joe, and Gary have put to me was, what does Brexit mean for UK automotive policy? Very easy, very small, but I think I'll kick off and pick up the optimistic perspective and go forward in giving you the answer in sort of 3 different steps. I think I would like to start to talk to you a little bit about what happened in our sector, which you will be part of and you will know yourself over the last 10 years. Where actually have we come to, where are we on the big challenges and opportunities that, especially in the technology space, are coming down the line for the automotive sector. Then I want to talk about Brexit and really go into more detail. Why is it such a challenge for this industry in particular? And then last but not least, come to the issue of automotive policy. So what does all of this mean for automotive policies? So to kick us off, UK automotive, strategic opportunities and challenges. Well, when we put that design, the main message here is really the fundamentals of UK automotive are strong, and you know this. Just looking at this picture, and if I had the time, compare it for 10 years before, we are the location for a significant amount of vehicle manufacturing at this point in time. Just look at the figures there. 6 mainstream car manufacturers, 8 premium and sports manufacturers, engine, commercial vehicle, design centers, bus and coach, very important, especially for Northern Ireland. We've got R&D centers, specialist car centers, and we've got a supply chain. Very challenging, but that's where we need to be. And when you look on the right-hand side, I think the main message is how important the contribution is that this industry provides to this economy, to jobs and prosperity, as you see, often in areas that exactly need it at this point in time. We are a major engine producers, 2.7. I point this out, as you will see, because that's obviously one of the challenges as we go into transition. We are a car builder of 1.67 million last year, significant car builder. We are the 2nd largest car market across Europe, and we depend on exports. We are an exporting and importing country going forward with significant employment opportunities. So at a glance, my main message is UK automotive as it stands today is a very strong proposition in the European production system. And how did we get there? I mean, this slide is really to show you, yes, 1972 was probably a really big high for manufacturing of cars. But as you can see, we've recovered extremely well after the financial crisis. 2009, you can see very challenging position for industry all across the globe, all across Europe. But UK really got out there. It got some people to even think we could potentially reach 2 million production. That would have been very significant. I'm very sorry to say we are not quite on that trajectory, as you can see, for 2017. And I'll come to the reasons for that and the challenges that we have ahead of ourselves. Then looking at the registration side, very similar picture. I think UK market was much quicker off the mark. But as you can see, again, we are now after hitting a peak in 2016, we are, albeit at a high level, but we are going down again. We need to try and have a look at what's behind it. And that's the story I want to tell, what's really behind it. And I want to start this first session of what's actually happening in our sector. What are we at? It's this transformation that's happening. And let's pick up one of the areas of transformation, the alternatively fueled vehicle market. Because although it is obviously still starting from a relatively low base, the exponential growth rates that you can see here for the green line in terms of market share for AFVs is extremely positive, double digits, as compared to the structural decline we are now seeing and we expect to continue around diesel technology and diesel market share going forward. Now, as I said, it's still at a relatively low base. Total market share year to date is 2.4%. But as I explain and go into more detail, this is where transformation and opportunities and challenges will come for the industry going forward. So the future and what we really, if you talk to the global industry, want to talk about and want to get ahead in and be competitive in is exactly this, the convergence and the future of ACES. So that is, as you know, the automated revolution that's happening, the connectivity that's already out there, the electrification and hydrogen, the opportunities that come with changing how we propel our vehicles, and finally, the shared economy that is happening and is changing how our business models in our industry are working in the future. So to take them one by one, let's start with automation. 4 years ago, or it might be even 6 years by now, SMMT started to host a totally new event that tries to pick up this technology trend, our SMMT Connected event. We are hosting next year our next one on the 4th of April, and I hope you're all coming. But the reason why I want to show this is we try to establish what is the opportunity here, not just a challenge, what is the opportunity? And the economic opportunity is significant in this space if we get it right, if we can attract it. You can create jobs, as you can see, you can prevent, you have a safety aspect there, prevent accidents, have lives saved. But as you can already see with the job growth, and also when you look into the report, into where the value add is, it's changing, isn't it? It's not just in automotive, as we know, a traditional manufacturing where the opportunities. These opportunities are created across the economy, and there are new players in this space, and we need to work with these new players to make this really happen for the UK, this benefit of 51 billion. So where are we in the journey? I think most of you hopefully will be very familiar that in terms of automation, we are not just thinking going from one to the next. We actually see it as a sort of continuous journey along different levels of ever greater automation. At the moment, we are mainly around level 1 and level 2. But obviously, where we want to be or where this journey can go to and the exciting developments are taking place will very much be around level 4 and level 5. I think the Chancellor in last year's budget has probably predicted that he is hopeful we'll have level 4 and level 5 in the year 2021. We need to work very hard to get there, to make this a proper market proposition, but ambition is a good thing. This is probably a little bit more about where we are here and now, and it shows value is already created. What this table shows you is that already, this is from 2016, 2/3 or 1.8 million British new car buyers benefit in one way or another, either through standard fit or as an option from technologies, driver assistance system that bring exactly those benefits we talked about, benefits in terms of safety, benefits in terms of economic value created. And I think that's already a really good way going forward that's happened in the last few years. Then moving on to connectivity. Now, the C in the ACES, connectivity is even further advanced. You know, you already will have many connected services that you are taking on board. Let's pick up a couple. You know, eCall by law only came into force in April this year, but actually many manufacturers had it already much earlier. It's their fleet management systems are used with the commercial vehicle sector going forward. But then, as you see, the ones that don't have a big box around them, these are the ones we want to get to. They will really change the game, the vehicle to infrastructure, vehicle to vehicle, and over-the-air software updates. So quite a lot of value is happening here. So whereas in automation, we are still along the way, sort of midway, I think on connectivity, we are way in there and we are racing ahead. So really interesting and challenging proposition. And let's come back to the E then, the electrification. And here, again, the picture, we just had a quick discussion here with the audience, is mixed. So, you know, we are obviously one of the lead markets and the figures speak for themselves, you know, and we are raising and rising in terms of the market share of electric vehicles. As you can see on the right-hand side, there are different technologies that will be part of that transition that we are going forward. But as you can see, the green bar is still the more traditional, the traditional hybridization, and where the ambition is that actually at the lower end we see greater increases over time. A key part in that area is obviously what the manufacturers are putting onto the market, the commitments they've made, the public announcements they've made around electrification. But a key part of that whole picture is government policy. And as you can see, government has been a key player, OLEV in particular, the incentives that were given, not just for the vehicles, but for the infrastructure and R&D, have been exceptional so far. We think they are still needed. As you know, the plug-in car grant, unfortunately, has been reduced. We think we need to really keep an open mind and promote all the technologies that are going forward, especially since, as you can see from my slide, the government has very high ambition. And we don't see that to change in any way through Brexit or not. So this is the task we've got in front of us. A high ambition level for 2030. On the left, you see the ambition level for 2040 for all new cars and vans to be effectively zero emission. And there are a lot of areas in that space and a lot of implications of this very strong political ambition level that we need to work for. Not just through the market. How do we get the consumer with us? How do we actually get the infrastructure going? Are there equivalent ambitions on the infrastructure side? But for me, talking on behalf of the industry and its manufacturing side, we really need to get a grip and work around it. What does that mean for employment in our industry? How do we attract the supply chain and the value chains of the future? And that's what we are working on and will continue to do so, Brexit or not. So coming to the last item in the ACES, the mobility solutions, the shared area, SMMT commissioned a piece of work from Frost & Sullivan last year, and there's no doubt about it. The shared economy has reached automotive, has reached mobility. It will grow. Yes, it will have impact on vehicle numbers, vehicle sales. However, we don't predict that shared mobility will see off vehicle ownership totally, but it will grow over time. And I think this is something that vehicle manufacturers, as you can see, are already embracing significantly. And it is something that we will engage with when it comes to the agenda of urban mobility. So in a nutshell, these are all very big changes and disruptions and opportunities that are at the moment facing us as an industry, not just in the UK, but globally. I think from our perspective, a lot of clicking here, it is this space that we really need to focus our attention to. This is where the industry wants to be. This is where the government wants to be. This is where we as an economy wants to be. And the earlier we can get to that and continue, if not increase what we are doing in that space, the better. So what does that mean? You need to work, we as an industry need to work with many new players. SMMT has changed how we work. We've reached out massively to other stakeholders and to other parts of the ecosystem, and we can only continue because, as you see, the clockworks of automotive are not the clockworks of the industries that are delivering solutions in our space in the future. And that is a very exciting prospect, and the better we can be here in the UK, and we think we can, the better for us succeeding in this space. But I do want to end this first part of my presentation by saying the good news is this is not just industry wanting to do this is also government fully committed to this. We've seen over the last 10 years a significant sea change, irrespective of governing party, that really has grasped and realized that only by working together between industry and government and government taking a role in this game will we succeed. So we are really pleased, and hence really pleased that we've got the APC here, that through industrial strategic approach, and now we've got a sector deal as of January last year, through the Automotive Council, we've really changed the ecosystem here in the UK. We know what our priorities are. You see them on the slide. We've got a very, very strong focus on technology, accelerated digitalization, accelerated electrification, the CAF space, the digital engineering. But we know we need to deal with supply chain. If you talk about UK automotive, it's a supply chain where you really need to invest and change and take the opportunity that this disruption actually provides. And then last and absolutely not least, it is absolutely important that when we do technology and when we do supply chain, we create in the UK the business environment and skills that will allow the industry to grow here. So focus on transformational automotive skills is an absolute critical point, and I'll come back to that when we come to the Brexit discussion. So let's go over to Brexit. Brexit and what is really the impact of Brexit on the UK automotive industry, something I have to spend a lot of my time at the moment on. Now, when the referendum was held, or actually I can go even further, even earlier, the Bloomberg speech by David Cameron, we as an industry felt very, very clearly that we should try and work out why on earth is being part of the EU, the UK being part of the EU, so fundamental for our competitiveness and for our success going forward. And we've worked with KPMG way before any referendum on a piece of work that really set the early priorities for automotive that, in fairness, haven't changed very much because they are just so fundamental for our competitiveness. And they are around the single market, customs and regulatory piece. As you know, we are part of a European production system, a single platform. So being in this highest form of integration, having one single set of regulation in which you have a say, trade, where you don't have to worry about rules of origin, I will not go into details, but customs papers and other things is absolutely critical to be one part of this production system. So very, very critical for our sector going forward. We also have the issue around talent. I'll come to that in a minute, so I'll keep my powder dry there, and international trade. Being part of the EU is not just about having frictionless trade within the EU 28. It also allows you access to markets to over 40 international agreements going forward. And this is something that also in the current debate, we are very, very keen to secure because we cannot lose this. It's very important to UK automotive prospects. So taking them one by one, I've already mentioned as an industry, we are export-oriented. For consumers, it's important because we're import-oriented. You know, most of the choices you've got are actually vehicles you will have chosen that were produced in the EU. So it goes both ways, the challenge we are having here. But I think we should be really positive about this because what it shows is we are successful all over the globe. And in whatever way we are ending up on Brexit, we will want to continue to be successful. So that's our ambition level, and that's where we want to be. So first of all, it's very fundamental. The EU is the UK's automotive largest export market and trading partner. And geography will not change, as the Prime Minister, I think, said on Monday in her speech. And we fully agree. We are very close to the EU, so our integrated supply chains exist. And that's where I want to go next. We are a highly integrated sector. I think there has been a lot of coverage in the FT and many other places about what does it mean as an integrated sector? What does just-in-time production mean? And I think we've put the dial further. People understand a little bit better how automotive actually works across Europe and why moving from a state where you don't have a barrier to a state where you might have significant barriers to that free flow is a challenge. You know, just take the 1,100 EU trucks that deliver the car parks, the value you can see there. It goes in both ways. You know, we export, we import. The challenge is immediately visible going forward. And and I can expand in many more figures what that means, and I can multiply them for you, but I've got them here on a slide, so you can look at them later on. But what really agitates the industry, and it's obviously now at its greatest height, is really the risk of a no-deal Brexit. And why is that such a worry for UK automotive? Well, on a simple calculation, if the UK were to crash out of the EU with no deal, no arrangement, no nothing, we would have WTO tariffs applied to us for final cars. That would be 10%. You just have to add it up very quickly. Comes a very, very big figure, both on our exports, which is very hard to make up if you want to export into the EU market to try and make up a 10% tariff on the value of your car, 1.8 billion, but equally a tariff that comes on the imports that going forward. But that's just one bit of the equation. I think as much shiver down the spine will be sent by any worries about disruption on the border or delay at the border to this just-in-time production system. This is not just about row and roll-on, roll-off of vehicles. This is about batches that might be stuck behind other batches, might be co-located with other areas, and any delay is really highly costly. You cannot really prepare for this properly. You can do contingency for the short term, but your competitiveness is significantly decreased if you had to try and make up for what is sometimes potentially quite unplannable disruption. So very, very big risk. And for us, therefore, a priority is to not get into that situation and to secure a transition period where this is not the place. I thought in this context here and with this audience, I should also touch on regulation. Very, very important because the picture will significantly change once the UK becomes a third country if there's no deal. And the government is doing its no deal preparation, so is the Commission. But it just shows how much we will lose. Take type approval. So at the moment, the VCA is an EU member state type approval authority, so can issue manufacturers here that develop their vehicles here, that want to test them here, and then sell them all across the EU with that type of approval as certificate from the VCA, and no further testing is required. You've got your market, you can access it. When this will change, it will increase cost. It might dissuade investment in testing here, over here, and it might mean double testing in the future. This is not something where we want to be, and not just for the cost, dare I say it. If you look at the examples I've chosen here, emissions, CO2, e-call, REACH, these are all areas of high importance to us because cars produced in the UK will still be produced to be able to enter the European market. So you will still have to meet those various elements, but what you lose is the UK government's ability to influence them. And you can certainly see, especially on the CO2 agenda, that the very specific nature of the UK automotive industry has been taken into account when it came to discussions on CO2. So the question is, how will that be done in the future? Very big challenge for UK automotive. And then on talent, just to say, when we looked at our membership, we've got roughly in our workforce in manufacturing 10% of people in the UK are employed from the European side. As you know, in automotive, we already have a significant lack of talent and ability to recruit the engineers that are needed to get us on the trajectory that we thought we would be by now. Some of these 10%, it's very varied across businesses. Suppliers might have really quite higher double digits. So it will be very important that wherever we end up, either in the negotiations with the EU or in the UK only immigration system, that the immigration system does recognize the need for talent in automotive and doesn't restrict it. In automotive, it's not just about the top level talent. It is about operatives. It is about keeping the businesses going, and we need to find ways of taking that forward. Automotive is an example of a sector that is very much investing in skills, domestic talent, but it's not enough. It's still not enough, and we need to try and have the flexibility to also recruit and move our people around, our businesses in Europe. So significant challenge there. And really, in the current climate, I thought I'll add this. We as SMMT need to work with our businesses who potentially face or who are facing these uncertainties to prepare for all eventualities, just as much the government. And we've just started on the 10th of October, the SMMT Brexit Readiness Program. What is that trying to do? It is trying to allow access also for smaller companies, not just for our larger companies, but the suppliers to our OEM members, to really get advice to, dare I say it, Brexit-proof them, or to try and get into a space where they can deal with what will be the consequences of the UK being a third country as of the 29th of March next year. Many businesses that are traders in Europe will not, at this point in time, necessarily have the skills or the capacity to deal with customs declaration, to actually be able to tell their customers what the origin of their stuff really is for declaration purposes, and so on and so on. We are here to just try and help them to do it, and we think we want to do it also to make them competitive for the future. So this is not a program that will end in March. This is something that is for the future, to try and enable businesses to play their fullest part, irrespective of Brexit outcome. So, coming therefore to the end of my presentation and to the answers of what I see as hopefully interesting aspects to answer what does Brexit mean for automotive policy. There's no doubt where the priority lies in automotive. The number one priority at the moment for the automotive sector is that we do need to get a deal that avoids a cliff edge on the 29th of March and moves us into transition. We will observe it is absolutely the government's and parliament's job now to really look at what's on the offer, what will come out of the council going forward. But from a business perspective, the prospect of a no deal is just too unfathomable to go through. So we will be watching that going forward. But we've been also very clear that it's very important for automotive that the future relationship, the long-term relationship where we want to be with the EU, is as close as possible going forward. I showed you where we were and where we've never gone away from. For automotive, it's better to be in the single market and in the customs union. But obviously, we are in a Brexit process here. We need to find ways and have ambition to try and get as close as possible in the future relationship. And that is very important for us. This is our statement. I've promised not to do many words here. I think this is the only one I've put in there. And you can see, for automotive, Brexit is damage limitation. I wish it was different, but it isn't. But an outline agreement is a positive step to avoid a no-deal situation and go into transition, but ultimately where we want to be is frictionless. And that's a term that at the moment you find hard to see in statements. We will continue to say that, and we will continue to try and get support for this. But that is the number one priority for automotive policies. I think the reason why I showed you all the things where we've got to is we've got a job to do. And the number one priority really from Brexit, whatever the outcome is that these policies don't go back and don't become smaller, but actually grow in intensity, in productivity, and in effectiveness. And that's really my message to you. So we've got on the right-hand side, obviously, we've got an industrial strategy, fantastic. We've got the government's Road to Zero strategy. So there is commitment, there is drive. But we need to see this through. We are coming to a comprehensive spending review. It is absolutely important that the funding for all the initiatives that have been started will not start. And that depends obviously a bit on Brexit, but we need to have that ambition. We may need to make that clear that this needs to go forward. I would also say on that government policy piece as well, that it's very important to link up the good work you're doing on industry strategy with the policies that you might have around clean growth and around mobility, future of mobility, that we don't get them ajar. If we have high ambition scenarios on the uptake of these vehicles, then we need to have an equally strong strategy on what do we do with the employment that needs to shift from engine production to the kind of technologies that will in the future propel our vehicles or provide other opportunities. So we need to have answers to these. We have more work to do. Secondly, on the left hand of my slide, you already see some bits of that ecosystem. And again, thanks to APC for us to have this discussion today. It is highly important. You know, the real benefit of Automotive Council is that it not only brought government and industry together, but we actually identified the priorities to make the best use of limited money that is out there. So let's go for it. And we should really go for it and see a way of moving forward with the kind of ecosystem we have. Make it more efficient by all means. But don't stop now when we are just in the middle of what is a global race and where our competitive is anyhow impeded a little bit. Then if you go in the middle, on the top, that's about supply chains. NMCL is all about competitiveness in the supply chain. We need to see that started now. It's absolutely paramount that we bring the businesses we've got already up to the productivity levels we want them. All in all, automotive is highly productive, but there's always more to do, and we are trying to work through our supply chains to make us best productive going forward. Very important. And skills. Post-Brexit, we really need to find a better way of dealing with skills. If you compare the money that is spent on technology with the money that goes into skills, we talk a good talk, but we need to really tackle it now. And I think that needs to be much higher on the agenda going forward. Then two last points. On the right, you wonder, why have I got the UN there, the UNEC and the European Commission? The reason is, as we leave the EU, we lose in influence. There's no doubt about this. We will work with the government. We obviously all want to continue to influence. But once you're a third country, you will lose. However, much of automotive regulation, product regulation is UNECE-based. We need to build on that. We need to work more there. And we need to work in the European space really strongly to try and ensure that policies there go in the right direction, because we need to stay as close as possible to them. And then last but not least, the Department for International Trade and the GREAT campaign. I think you probably got from me the clear steer that for automotive, the number one trade deal we need to secure is the one with the EU. And it better be as good as possible, as close as possible, as integrated as possible. We are working extensively with the Department for International Trade to also look at opportunities that whenever the time and whatever the settlement come, might provide opportunities in other markets. But as you've seen, we're already busy in 160 markets. Not all of them have an EU FTA. So we will continue that come what may. But we will be absolutely there to try and promote UK automotive, whether that's through the GREAT campaign and others. And we shall do so whatever the outcome is of Brexit. And I'll stop at this point. So thanks very much for your attention.